Welcome, everybody. Hope you're doing well. This has sort of been like an adjustment week in this presidential campaign. Things were kind of chugging along in their own unusual way, admittedly, up until a few weeks ago. And then we had Joe Biden's debate performance. We had the subsequent assassination attempt of Donald Trump, Joe Biden getting COVID, Joe Biden announcing he would not seek re-election, Kamala Harris securing the delegates to be the nominee, and then the subsequent powerful triggering of MAGA world, either because of how Kamala Harris laughs or the fact that she's not white and by definition she must be unqualified to be where she is, which they refer to with the code she's a DEI candidate. And okay, so we're kind of letting things adjust. We're waiting for new polling, which next week will probably give us a little bit of a more accurate sense of, is there as much voting enthusiasm behind Kamala Harris as there appears to be from the record-setting financial donations? A lot of these questions are in flux. We're hoping to get answers soon. But one of the really interesting interjections into this is that aside from the insults that we hear talking to Trump supporters at a Trump rally, we are starting to get some focus group clips. And MSNBC sat down with some female Trump voters. Now, how do I say this? I've already received a bunch of emails from people about this focus group segment. And there were, unfortunately, a lot of reactions from people in the audience based on the kind of physical characteristics of these women. Stuff like, gee, I wonder why they don't relate to Kamala Harris. Yes, the women are all white, I believe, but also stuff about the weight of the women and all these kind of extraneous things. Let's put all of that aside for the time being and focus in on the fact that while these are hardcore committed Trump voters, they all seem to recognize that Kamala Harris replacing Joe Biden does threaten Trump. It does bring energy. It is generating excitement. They are admitting it. And that's as powerful a sign as any that there may be something to this. Okay, so let's listen. MSNBC focus group with female Trump voters weighing in on Kamala Harris as the nominee.
Vice President Kamala Harris as the nominee dramatically changes Donald Trump's odds of winning.
I'm worried about it.
Yes.
I think she's going to go for the minority and female and younger voters.
Progressive.
Everybody's excited about her.
Right.
And that scares me.
Right.
You know, because Trump has to reconfigure where he's going and how they're going to outsmart her.
Now, well, there's more of this. The idea that Trump has to reconfigure is very much linked to the new questions about, damn it, was JD Vance really the right choice?
We've endorsed JP, right? JD Mandel.
Is he the right choice? Because sure, he's a doormat for Trump, but especially now in the context of Trump's the oldest nominee in American history, and Trump's brain is increasingly glitching, as we saw yesterday. What does JD Vance really bring in the contrast of Kamala Harris, who is more charismatic than JD Vance? Okay, so the reconfiguring that this woman is referring to is part of what is going on, and also the fact that Trump and Republicans spent all of last week at the RNC running against Joe Biden, and he's no longer the person who's running, and it was sort of a waste of time.
How do you perceive Vice President Harris compared to President Biden in terms of competency and experience?
I think she's worse. She doesn't even know what's going on at the border.
Right.
So this is where the hyper-partisanship comes through.
And that's what she was
supposed to be doing
and in charge of. I mean, as a school teacher, if I did not
Oh my goodness, imagine that this is your kid's teacher. Dear God.
do what I was supposed to be doing, you better believe my job would be in jeopardy. Well, it isn't. It not only was her job not in jeopardy, she was just handed a promotion.
Is there anyone that Kamala Harris could appoint as her vice president that you would find reassuring? Would make you consider voting for her?
No.
Never considered voting for her. No.
I would
not
do RFK Jr. way before her.
There you go. I would vote RFK Jr. way before her, which, by the way, there is growing pressure now from MAGA world to get RFK Jr. out in this new context where support really, there were a bunch of people not happy with Biden that were kind of ambivalent, and they were sort of reluctantly considering RFK. A large swath of that now, in the absence of Biden with Kamala Harris as the presumptive nominee, have said, you know what? The obvious right thing here is let's go with Harris. I'm not going to dilly-dally and consider this RFK stuff any longer. But it's funny that the woman says I'd consider RFK before Kamala Harris. So what's the takeaway? The takeaway is these are women who have been targeted by weaponized propaganda and disinformation. They've fallen hook, line, and sinker for all of it. And yet they recognize Kamala Harris brings energy. Kamala Harris shakes up the race in such a way that Donald Trump has to realign and reconfigure the way that he is going to run this race. And which I agree with completely, everybody is recognizing that. Now, whether you can carry that forward into a successful campaign, whether we get to debates where that dynamic becomes much more visible, Trump has agreed to debates, although it seems like it would be really stupid for Trump to debate Kamala Harris. Hard to imagine that would go particularly well for Trump. The key takeaway, Trump women voters admit Kamala Harris is far greater a threat to Trump than was President Joe Biden. A confused JD Vance now says that Biden opting out of running for re-election is a threat to democracy. Now, I want to remind you that in the aftermath of the failed assassination attempt against Donald Trump, MAGA was saying calling Trump a threat to democracy is what almost got Trump killed. They attached themselves to this line. When leftists said Trump threatens democracy, they incited the shooter, a Republican shooter with a Republican father with access to a firearm that many of us on the left would not have wanted him to have access to. So it makes no sense. But just consider the double standard. Saying Trump's a threat to democracy is inciting violence. And yet here is JD Vance saying that Biden deciding not to run is a threat to democracy.
Clear these guys don't actually care about democracy. They don't care about the will of the voters. They just care about power. What I find so profoundly crazy about this, Charlie, is for literally years, I have been told that my party is the threat to democracy because, there was a riot on January the 6th at the U.S. Capitol.
Because Trump incited a riot to prevent a peaceful transfer of power. It's a little heavier than what JD Vance is suggesting.
Or because Donald Trump used constitutional means to try to challenge the results in 2020. Now, you had a bunch of Democrat billionaires get in a room with Barack Obama and Nancy Pelosi and decide that the president of the United States wasn't allowed to run again. If that isn't a threat to democracy, I don't know what is. And I think that a lot of Americans, whether they agree with my politics or President Trump's politics, they think this is a little creepy. You shouldn't be able to do this to the sitting president.
I was thinking something about JD Vance is a little creepy.
United States. I don't care what his politics are. You should have to win the trust and the support of voters to run for president in this country. Kamala Harris hasn't done that. And frankly, neither has anybody else in the Democratic Party. The only person who did it, we may not like him, is Joe Biden. And it's bizarre to me how just quickly they threw him out when his political prospects looked bad.
So listen, a couple different things here. First of all, JD Vance continuing to remove any remaining shred of doubt about why his likability and favorability is in the toilet. But I guess Republicans don't really think Biden is too old after all, right? Because now that Biden is out, they're saying, oh, this is a threat to democracy. He should have stayed in. I guess he's not really too old to run. And by the way, now that Trump's the oldest nominee in American history, we certainly don't want to talk about that. So maybe age doesn't really matter. But let's address the kind of alleged anti-democratic nature of this. We can, let's just be honest. Kamala Harris is going to be the nominee. It's abundantly clear. She convinced the delegates. She lobbied the delegates. The delegates like her. She's going to be the nominee. Is this a different process than if primary voters had said, we want Harris rather than Biden? Or is it a different process than if Biden a year ago has said, I'm not seeking re-election, Kamala Harris runs a campaign, They hold primaries and she wins the primaries. It is a different situation than that. Is it less directly Democratic? It is less directly Democratic. It's important to remember that it is not a matter of law. Political parties can choose their nominees however they want. And imagine that the DNC as a party said, hey, you know what? We don't even want to have primaries. We're just going to decide ourselves. The delegates will decide, period. We'll never have primaries. They could do that. And then voters could react by saying, I reject that process. I'm not voting for whoever the delegates pick because I don't like the process. That would be absolutely fine. There is no question that the process that is leading to Kamala Harris as the nominee is not as traditionally Democratic as a normal primary. I think the counterpoints are Harris was on the ticket that won the primary. It was Biden-Harris. It's not, hey, let's pull in some random senator and say, you are now the nominee. The primary voters were voting for the ticket, and the ticket did include Kamala Harris. So as a sort of like particular detail, I do think that that is an important thing to consider. Secondly, Kamala Harris went out and sought the support of delegates. It wasn't, hey, you know what? We've decided it's Kamala Harris. She's got a bunch of endorsements. She seems like the natural replacement. She went out, spoke to the delegates, lobbied the delegates, and they said, hey, you know what? This is who we are going to support. And then, of course, if the American people buy into JD Vance's argument, if they buy into MAGA Mike Johnson's argument, this is fundamentally undemocratic to a degree that Kamala Harris deserves to lose, then the American people will say, hey, you know what? I agree. It's undemocratic. I'm not going to vote for Kamala Harris. I'm going to stay home or I'm going to vote for Trump. That's absolutely their choice. The early indicator from the record upon record upon record, just gobs of money being donated, small dollar donations primarily to Kamala Harris, it seems that the this is anti-democratic argument is falling mostly on deaf ears. Let me just go back to one other aspect of this one more time. You know, they whined and whined and whined that President Biden was too old and not capable of another term. And now they whine and whine and whine that he dropped out. How did you expect a new candidate to be selected? And I know that there was this idea of a new primary floated. It was never going to happen. It's not happening. It just didn't make any sense. So they're whining either way. And that's what you have to remember. And it's sort of like the people who there's not that many of them right now, fortunately, but they may become a political force, who were arguing Biden should get out. And then now they're complaining that Kamala Harris is the replacement when it was sort of like obvious that she was the heir apparent if President Biden were to get out at this late stage of the race. So a lot of people wanting to have it both ways or saying Democrats don't get to have it either way. And JD Vance should remember, they will come for him next. He could be the next Mike Pence. Right now, he's doing his lapdog doormat thing for Trump. But if MAGA determines JD Vance is the reason we lose in November, JD Vance didn't send it back to the states, not that he would be in a position to do so or whatever, right? If Trump loses, they're coming for JD Vance, and all of this lapdog doormat stuff that he's doing could very quickly backfire. We have video from Trump's Charlotte, North Carolina rally 2 days ago of interviews with supporters of Trump. And the big takeaway for me is that these people are wackier than ever. They seem to be getting worse. We looked at moments from the rally itself yesterday, and I wanted to, because we haven't done this for a while, just play a couple of clips. Check out how weird and creepy all of this is. Right Side Broadcasting Network interviewed a guy who claims to be an actor, and he says the media is to blame for Trump getting shot by a Republican. Very weird. And he also wrote a poem about it, although it doesn't really sound like a poem. Here's the end of it, and it's bizarre.
What we witnessed almost 2 weeks ago is the culmination of almost 10 years of media manipulation and dirty politics focused on destroying one guy. Some of you, and I mean some of you, almost got what you wanted almost 2 weeks ago. But now, we have a message for you.
Yes.
You have exhausted all of your options. So just take the big L with the utmost grace and style, because you cannot get rid of this man.
Yes. Amen. Thank you for that.
There you go. And the host first of all, was that a poem? It seemed like a badly written note, but I I have to admit, I did not specialize in poetry at any level of English or writing class. So a completely deranged perspective that the media almost got what it wanted by getting Trump killed. But by the way, it's so stupid. Not only does it not pass the sniff test, it seems that what the media wants is a hotly contested race with a lot of controversy. And it seems that Trump just getting shot dead and then that's the end and he's replaced with like a boring Republican. I don't know that that's even what corporate media would want. Then we go to this next guy at the Trump rally. He's asked, what impresses you the most about Trump? And I can't even believe this is real. The guy says Trump's humility. Trump's humility is what impresses him.
Catch him over in Greenville with Laura Ingraham at the town hall. Very impressed with Donald Trump. Seemed to be a very humble guy. I think he's earned everything he's got. So I don't.
He is not humble, and he's been handed everything he has.
Know why he would give all that up unless he's just a true patriot.
And what brought you to the MAGA movement ultimately?
Just believing everybody needs to work for what they got. Nothing is free. And if you're waiting on handouts, you're here for the wrong reason.
Right. Trump, whose success is due to handouts from his father, is humble and self-made. But if any voters are waiting around for handouts, no.
I don't think Donald Trump's going to hand it all out to people. I think he needs to clean it all up, cut the fat off our government. Let's get back to a constitutional government and everybody working and earning what they have.
There you go. And of course, Trump has not earned what he has. And in fact, numerous reports have assessed that if Trump had taken his inheritance and just stuck it in the S&P 500, he'd be wealthier than he is right now, thanks to all of his business ventures, some failed and some successful. And then lastly, and this is just, it seems to affect people of all ages. Here's a guy at Trump's rally in North Carolina who has a Trump Pokemon card that he made into a necklace.
But I can't stop staring.
It's like a baseball card of some sort there. Yeah.
This is my Donald Trump Pokemon card that I found. And I couldn't pass it up, and I went ahead and put it on a chain.
That's amazing.
That's pretty fantastic. So where'd you find that?
A little local shop we have down in Mooresville, North Carolina.
There you go. He's got a Trump Pokemon card and has turned it into a necklace and is proudly displaying it. Here's the question we have to contend with right now, okay? What happens to these people if Trump is defeated in November? Quite literally, what do? Do they exit politics as Trump sails off into the sunset? Because a lot of these folks were not really engaging with the political system before Trump. They were brought in by Trump. So I wonder what does happen to them or with them. And secondly, do they get activated in a way that is potentially violent if Donald Trump loses in November? And that's the part that truly kind of scares me the most. I hope the answer is no. As all of you know, I never incite violence. I am against violence. I don't want anybody shot. I want them losing at the ballot box. But do these folks become violent if Trump loses again? Because think about how much will be pent up at that point. It will have been the 2018 midterm underperformance, Trump losing in 2020 in an election many of them feel was rigged, not doing well in the supposed 2022 red wave, losing a lot of the off-year elections last year, including any referendum related to Roe v. Wade or abortion. And then if Trump goes down again, after everything that's gone down, and I hate to say it, but especially if Trump loses to a non-white woman, Kamala Harris, I worry that they will be triggered into serious violence. All we can do now is hope that it does not happen and also be properly prepared if it does. Send me your thoughts. Will MAGA get violent as a last gasp if Trump is defeated in November? Email me, info@davidpakman.com. Pre-order my forthcoming book, The Echo Machine, on any of the well-known websites that sell books, including in audiobook format or Kindle or physical hardcover. And remember that you can sign up for free on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/The David Pakman Show. We'll take a very quick break and be right back. Don't forget that the best way to support the David Pakman Show is by becoming a member, which gives you access to the daily bonus show, the regular show with no commercials. You also get access to our entire archive of every episode dating back a really long time and plenty of other awesome membership perks. Go to joinpakman.com, joinpakman.com. They are continuing to attack Kamala Harris for how she laughs. At first, my reaction was, this is really stupid and it's kind of mean. But I've heard from a lot of you, some of you who say you have unique laughs. And I actually want to say a little more today about this. But before I do that, let me just remind you, the various RNC attack Twitter accounts continue going after Kamala Harris for how she laughs. After one of her rallies earlier this week, the one in Milwaukee, the RNC Research Twitter account tweeted out, quote, Kamala Harris brought her cackle to Milwaukee, and they attached the following video with it.
Good afternoon, Wisconsin.
She did laugh. She did laugh. And as George Conway told us earlier this week, she laughs because she actually has a sense of humor and she can tell and understand jokes. Trump seems to have some physical inability, some brain issue that prevents him from really understanding jokes and humor. He has no sense of satire or sarcasm. And it's just a reminder of how lost and out of their element they are right now. Even Trump is trying to pick up on this. Remember at his rally over the weekend, this was in Grand Rapids, Michigan, before Joe Biden even stepped aside, before Kamala Harris secured the support of enough delegates to become the presumptive nominee, Trump was already going after her and going after her for the very same reason.
From the moment we take back the White House from crooked Joe Biden and Kamala, I call her Laughing Kamala. You ever watch her laugh? She's crazy. You know, you can tell a lot by a laugh. No, she's crazy. She's nuts.
So first, I'm curious as to whether Trump will even get Kamala's name right by the time that he hopefully loses to her in November, continuing to mispronounce her name. But there's actually a lot here to this laughter thing. First of all, there's Trump and going after Kamala for how she laughs. It's a classic bullying behavior. Mocking someone's laugh is the exact same type of behavior that traditional bullies do. And Trump is a traditional bully. He's the classic narcissistic bully. And there's no surprise at all that he thinks going after Kamala Harris's laugh is an appealing thing to do. But I want to say something specifically about laughter. Laughter is this kind of in-between. You know, we sometimes say, if you ridicule someone for their race or their height, those are immutable characteristics that you're born with. You know, nutrition can affect height, sure. But generically speaking, height and race, these are characteristics you're born with. And we would say these are out of bounds for criticizing people. On the other hand, it's sort of like, hey, you like Power Rangers? Ha ha. Okay, that's a choice. Are there predispositions to like Power Rangers? I don't know, but you know, I don't care if people like Power Rangers, but the point is what team you're a fan of or what shows you like or whatever. These would be choices and maybe we would consider them more valid in terms of making fun of people. There's not the same social stigma with making fun of someone for the books that they like as compared to their race, which we would call racism or prejudice. Laughter is sort of an in-between thing because there is a natural and spontaneous aspect to laughter. Sure, if people ridicule you, you might try to contain or modify your laughter, make it sound different in order not to be made fun of. But when you go after people for how they laugh, there is something that is particularly vulnerable about how people laugh. And it's just an ugly thing to do. And it's a reminder of how they don't really have anything. As I talked about with George Conway earlier this week, they have Kamala's laugh. They have the fact that she doesn't have biological children. And they have DEI, which is really just a form of racism. It's a way of saying, if she were white, she wouldn't be here. She's only here because she's half Jamaican, half Indian. So there's a really ugly thing here. And when we talk about Trump as a bully, social anxiety can be very much affected by how people react to different characteristics about you. There are people who are self-conscious about their teeth. And the more they are told or people kind of look at their teeth, the more they try to find ways not to show their teeth when they laugh, which is a very natural thing. And it generates social anxiety. Laughter is the same thing. So the point I'm trying to make is it's not a shock that an ugly bully like Trump would focus in on something like this, and that Republicans would in general, because there's a lot to it that is really bothersome to people. And it's just a reminder that they don't really have anything solid against Kamala Harris. A visibly deranged Roseanne Barr continues to insist, even despite the fact that Joe Biden has stepped aside and Kamala Harris has secured the delegate support to be the next presidential nominee. Roseanne Barr continues to suggest Michelle Obama with the running mate of Hillary Clinton will be the nominees. Funny little story. After Roseanne Barr's last deranged rant, which we talked about, we actually tried to invite her on the show. And clearly aware of my commentary about her, someone wrote back saying something like, we don't work with people who say whatever I said about Roseanne Barr. But David can come on our show if he wants, to which we, of course, said absolutely. And we have never heard back. So needless to say, here is Roseanne Barr's latest commentary, conspiracy theory. She seems like she's really in a tough way right now.
He's saying it's going to be Michelle Obama. It's not going to be Kamala Harris. Michelle Obama is going to be the ultimate nominee. How do you think that's going to play?
Yeah.
Well, that's what I think they'll probably do with Hillary as vice in their open primary. I think it's going to be a big show that everybody needs to bring their popcorn to. It's going to be very entertaining. But,
really?
There's moves and then there's counter moves because we are in a war. We're in an information war.
I believe a wellness check is necessary now.
And so we'll see every move they make, the other side counters it. And it seems that they always lose. Whatever they come up with, they always lose.
Of course, they won in 2020 and the 2022 midterms weren't so bad and the 2023 off-year elections weren't so bad. But other than that, they always lose.
They lost the Jack Smith thing. They lost the New York thing. They lost the, when it goes to the Supreme Court, they always lose. But of course, that's why they're trying to change everything about the Supreme Court in pursuit of their hero Obama, who
He's saying it's going to be.
This is a very, very deranged perspective. But shockingly, the reason I'm bringing this to you is not just because it's Roseanne Barr's view. There's a whole bunch of right-wingers who are convinced. I mean, listen, if I really want to step back, there's a bunch of right-wingers convinced that Joe Biden isn't the real Biden, that he was replaced long ago. There are right-wingers convinced that Joe Biden doesn't actually know that he has decided not to run for re-election. There are right-wingers convinced that Barack Obama is actually still in control. And yes, there are many right-wingers convinced that Kamala Harris will not ultimately be the nominee. Now, what gets funny is when the conspiracy theories conflict. For example, Democrats are going to rig it in November. And also, Joe Biden stepped aside because he can't win. Well, if you have the ability to rig it in November, why would you need Joe Biden to step aside? Those conspiracy theories conflict. Now, if you confront them with it, what they will say is they could win by rigging it if it were close. But because they realized Joe Biden was going to lose by a landslide, they decided it's too much of a lead that Trump has for Democrats to rig it. So we have to actually replace Biden. Now, with every single one of these conspiracy theories, they do what's called special pleading. And I've given a sort of example of this before, which is, hey, there's an invisible tiger in the room with me right now. Ah, okay, well, let's test that. The tiger's invisible, but I'm sure if I throw a ball, it'll hit the tiger. And even though I can't see the tiger, the ball will fall to the ground. And they go, no. The tiger is not only invisible, mass also goes through the tiger. Okay, well, the tiger must need to eat. So let's find out if there's really a tiger. I'm going to put a nice steak on the floor, and sometime in the next couple of days, we're going to see the steak consumed by the invisible massless tiger. No, because the tiger also doesn't need to eat. You get the point, which is every time we think we have a fail-safe test or some kind of gotcha, they go to the next level. It's called special pleading, and it's pretty pathetic, but they don't seem to have anything else left. So it's conspiracy theories from Roseanne Barr, special pleadings from MAGA Republicans on Twitter, and the hopeful outcome is a resounding rejection of Project 2025, Agenda 47, the Article 3 project, and of 4 more years from Trump. All we can do is wait, but we'll know very soon. If you value what we do at The David Pakman Show, remember to support us on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/David Pakman Show, where you can get access to behind-the-scenes videos, the daily bonus show, the commercial-free daily show. You can support the show for as little as $2 a month. Check it out at patreon.com/David Pakman Show. Fox News has been really jumping on the who will be Kamala Harris's VP sort of story. And it's a big story. It's an important story. One of the names that's been floated is the Democratic governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz. And he actually appeared on Fox News this week. And it was a very interesting moment because first and foremost, Walz went right at Trump. And he pointed out something that we've been pointing out, which is not only in a way is Trump saddled now with JD Vance in an environment, in a new campaign against Kamala Harris, where Vance may not really be the right or best guy. The MAGA Republican Party's takeover, the MAGA Trump world takeover of the Republican Party has saddled the Republican Party with the oldest presidential nominee in American history, and that's Donald Trump. Tim Walz did a very funny thing, which is he went on Fox News and he said, you guys are stuck with Trump. Bill Hemmer and Dana Perino seemed visibly uncomfortable by this. And then Trump was furious that Tim Walz was even given this interview. So let's check this out. I absolutely love this.
There's a certain irony to saying that Donald Trump is bad for democracy, when it looks pretty obvious that the Democratic Party leapfrogged the entire democratic system, and they did it in about 24 hours publicly.
Look, the process has always been there. I welcome, if Sean or anybody wants to become a DNC delegate, you're welcome to. But what I know is Democrats are ready to move when the situation warrants it. Look, it doesn't matter convictions. It doesn't matter failed policies. Republican Party stuck with Donald Trump. He's yours. You've got him. Welcome to it. Democratic Party can make our decisions. We pick our nominee. Look, if you don't like it, don't vote for it in November. But I think the American public are going to see.
This is super strong.
They knew that this administration was delivering. We knew that as far as economic numbers placed against global numbers, America's in a far better shape. And we also know that a foreign policy that respects our alliances, not cozying up to dictators like Putin and Orban, is not the way to go.
How about this one, Governor?
JD Vance, mind your own business is what I would tell them. We'll manage it.
This is absolutely perfectly done. Listen. Each party can use whatever system they want to pick their candidates. There was certainly a concern about the democratic or anti-democratic nature of how Joe Biden's replacement would be selected. There are people calling for an open convention. There isn't really anyone running against Kamala Harris. Now, you could argue, well, it's because they've been oppressed and scared against even running. All right. Well, I mean, she also reached out to some and said, we're vetting you for VP. And they said, well, I'd rather be vetted for VP rather than running against her. And Tim Walz is right. You guys are stuck with Trump. Vote for him if that's what you want. It looks like it's going to be Kamala Harris. She's secured more than 50% of the delegates already in terms of them voicing support for her. If you don't like the way that she ended up on the ticket, then don't vote for that. But Trump was watching this. Within moments of this airing on Fox News, Trump took to Truth Social and said, quote, why did Fox News put up Tim Walz, governor of Minnesota, where I am leading? They make me fight battles that I shouldn't have to fight. This is an absolutely terrified, fragile snowflake Trump, where even just allowing a governor on from a state, Trump sees that as a direct attack on his campaign. And Tim Walz kept going. I have one other clip from this where he pointed out the record is good. we're in good shape. The record is solid.
Harris has to make a choice now. She's looking for a running mate. We can put up on the board here the people who are possibly being vetted. Are you being vetted to be a vice presidential choice for Kamala Harris?
Look, I spoke with the vice president. I'm not going to get into exactly what we spoke about, but we have the same values. We believe we can win in the Midwest. I think what I'm most proud of is if you look at those folks you put up there, they're Democratic governors. That's because Democratic states are creating jobs. Democratic states are welcoming. Democratic states are protecting those personal freedoms, those things like reproductive rights, your ability to be able to marry who you wish to marry, those types of things that are basic American values. And so my case on that is I will do what's ever necessary to make sure that those values are front and center.
Once again, what is he doing here that is so critical? In a question about are you being vetted, he says, why wouldn't I be vetted? And why wouldn't any of these Democratic governors be vetted, given the record of the Democratic states? And I know that Republicans have been running for years on crime is up in blue cities, crime is up in blue states. Crime rate is down overall. It's down more in blue states than red states. The New York City crime rate is lower than that of Oklahoma City. The New York State crime rate is lower than that of Oklahoma as a state. On average, there's lower unemployment in blue states, higher per capita incomes, more innovation as measured by startups, M&A activity, and patents, however you want to slice and dice it. And it's really important to keep talking about that. And the conventional wisdom is that a Democratic governor is the way to go in terms of vice presidential pick. We will see where that lands. Meanwhile, this wasn't the only thing that Trump was upset about on Truth Social. Trump had a nutty meltdown on Truth Social. I would never use terms like this, but someone wrote to me and said, David, his meltdown was nuttier than squirrel poop. And I think that's completely unbecoming of serious political discussion. So I would never say that. What I will tell you is this guy seems completely and totally unhinged, posting message after message, some messages multiple within 1 minute. This is what Trump is doing. He recently got shot. The person he's running against has changed. And what's he doing? He's posting to Truth Social, starting with, quote, the Biden-Harris administration did not properly protect me, and I was forced to take a bullet for democracy. It was my great honor to do so. First of all, I don't know how democracy is served by Trump's ear being grazed with a bullet shot by a Republican. I don't understand that. Secondly, one of the big stories about Trump and the Secret Service for years has been that Trump wants loyalist Secret Service agents around him, and he is heavily involved in deciding on who is around him and in what circumstances and in what capacity. There is, of course, no evidence whatsoever that the Biden-Harris administration had anything to do with the Secret Service opting to put the perimeter where it did in Butler, Pennsylvania on that day. There's no evidence of any kind at all. But the critical part is that if anybody between Biden and Trump influenced how Secret Service was operating that day and who the agents were, it's Trump's selectivity because he wants to have loyalist Secret Service agents around him. Okay, Trump continues on Truth Central, quote, I can't believe it. They're turning crooked Joe Biden, the worst president in the history of the United States, into a hero. He was pushed out of power like a dog. And look at what the radical left is able to do. MAGA 2024. Trump continuing, wildly triggered. Lion Kamala Harris destroys everything she touches. What I see there is a very scared Donald Trump, who now is the oldest presidential nominee in American history. And he has to figure out, what is my argument against Kamala Harris? So far, she doesn't have biological children, and she laughs in a way that Republicans find off-putting. And then Trump also on Truth Social, quote, the Democrats lied and misled the public about crooked Joe Biden. And now we find he is a complete and total cognitive and physical mess. Cognitive is capitalized, so is physical. And then mess is in quotes and in all caps. Really strange syntax. Trump finishing up his post. They also mislead the Republican Party, causing it to waste a great deal of time and money to be resumed. So that is Trump's latest. And I'll be very honest with you. He seems genuinely terrified about what to do next. Now, as far as the polling goes, to remind you, we're still in this sort of like it's within the margin of error phase. I see this as better news for Kamala Harris than Trump. And what I mean by that is the following. Trump's been the nominee officially for about a week and the presumptive nominee for months, if not even longer than that. Kamala Harris, we just learned, would be running 5 days ago, and the presumptive nominee 3 to 4 days ago, as we learned that a majority of Democratic delegates say, I'm supporting Kamala. And after all of that, Trump's lead is 1.9. That's a much better sign for Kamala Harris than it is for Donald Trump. Now, this doesn't mean she will win, but it does mean she can win. And Trump and Vance now stuck. They're sort of like the old model. The new this year's version of the car has been released. And now Trump and Vance, all they have for sale, or to put it a different way, Kamala Harris is selling this year's model of the car. It's just came better features, better software. Trump and Vance have fully invested in last year's car. And now they have to figure out how to justify to voters, this is still the one you want. Not an enviable position. You can still do it, but it's not an enviable position. Let me know where you expect polling to be a week from now. You can email info@davidpakman.com. We'll take a break and then continue. Follow us on social media. Interact with the David Pakman Show community. See exclusive content. See when we're taking calls live. And stay up to date on other big show announcements. We post daily. Find us on Reddit, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Discord, and TikTok. Well, it's a very special Friday feedback episode where I hear from you, your thoughts about what's going on politically. We, of course, saw over last weekend the news from President Joe Biden that he will not seek re-election. We have a very rapid front runner emerging, and that is the Vice President Kamala Harris, and a lot of messages coming in from you about it, including this first one on the subreddit from a weebie who says, if Harris is the nominee, it will be a repeat of 2016. The last time we had an unpopular female candidate go up against Trump, it didn't work out so good. Harris is even more unpopular. Do the math. The only one who can beat Trump is Biden. Well, the Biden ship has sailed, so it's not a particularly useful thing to keep talking about. I don't know whether Kamala Harris will beat Trump, but I know that circumstances are very different than they were in 2016. In 2016, it was the unknown of a Trump presidency, where a bunch of people said, sounds kind of funny. I don't know, how bad could it really be? I don't really like Hillary. I don't like her pantsuits, or I don't like her position on Iraq, or I believe she'll get us into 3 wars, even though obviously she wouldn't. I might stay home. I might vote Trump just for a goof. Well, we now have 4 years of Trump, including the rampant criminality, sexual assault, all of it. And so to say that just because Harris is a woman and Hillary is a woman, the outcome will be the same, it is a very different scenario. And I would be very cautious about that perspective. Now, we had a different perspective from right before Biden dropped out. Skate Cloud said, prediction, if Biden drops out, Republicans are going to get crushed at the polls. The excitement of a new candidate will rock the political world. Both Trump and Biden have the 2 highest disapproval ratings for candidates. I think even Kamala, with a strong VP, will wreck Trump when it comes voting day. What do you think? Here's what I can tell you about Kamala Harris. Before even being the nominee, she's already polling roughly the way Biden was. If indeed she becomes the official nominee and debates Trump and mops the floor with him, as I expect she would, which I think is why Trump will try not to debate her, I think she could gain conservatively 6 points from where she is right now, which could be enough. Maybe even 8 or potentially a little more. I don't know that to be a fact, but I believe it is possible. And there are growing voices that say there's a reason Republicans are flipping out about this. And it's because they're terrified. Now, on the other hand, Here is a poll we ran on the David Pakman Show YouTube channel. We asked the question, is Kamala Harris more likely to defeat Trump than Joe Biden? 105,000 of you voted. 1/3 of you said Harris is more likely to defeat Trump. 2/3 of you said Harris is less likely to defeat Trump. I think we should rerun this poll in a couple of weeks and see if and how anybody's opinions have changed. When it comes to the experience argument with Kamala Harris, DDDL on YouTube said he has literally, talking about JD Vance, he has literally 2 years experience as a junior senator, but Kamala is the one they say is unqualified. Make it make sense. Here's what you have to understand, D. They will use any argument they can against their opponents, even if it is an argument more accurately or better suited to themselves. They always will do it. They will do it every single time, because I have an entire chapter actually in my forthcoming book, The Echo Machine, about this. They claim to care about principles. They claim to be the principled ones. They claim to be the ones who first establish their code of morality and then simply follow it, and they don't do any of that. They will give you a set of moral beliefs and political positions in a vacuum, and as soon as they become inconvenient to whatever they're trying to achieve, they ignore it. If it's actually the case that JD Vance is completely unqualified by their own standard that they want to apply to Kamala Harris, doesn't matter, because it's no longer convenient. They ignore it. They come up with something different. Now, I've been reading some interesting pieces that argue that all of a sudden Trump is regretting selecting JD Vance, that the announcement of JD Vance was ridiculed by some and ignored by others, that particularly when not running against Joe Biden and Harris, but potentially against Harris and someone else, the optics are not nearly as good and the matchup is no longer nearly as powerful for JD Vance. I hope he is regretting it. I hope he is regretting it. All right. Nancy Paul said just moments before Biden said he's not running, and I put this message in front of you because I got so many like it. Nancy Paul said, MSNBC, or this show for that matter, talking about my show, isn't much better with all the negative talk about Biden. It's way too late to be talking about replacing him, as most states have had their primaries. Plus, why should they? Truly disgusting on the part of the media. Well, listen, Nancy, I have nothing to do with MSNBC. I can't tell you what they're doing or why they're doing it. What I can tell you is that I haven't been doing any negative talk about President Biden. I have been advising my audience about whether I believe the pressure on him to step aside has gotten great enough that there's no going back. And for months, I didn't believe the pressure on him had gotten to that level. Last Thursday, meaning 8 days ago from when this show is coming out, last Thursday, my view changed. And I started to become convinced that the pressure on Biden to step aside, the donors bailing, Pelosi bailing, Obama behind the scenes saying, probably should be reconsidered. My analysis was simply, it's getting to where it will not be able to be ignored. And people like Nancy attack me for it and say that it is negative talk and that Biden was not going to be replaced. Well, he's been replaced. And my fear is that there will be a group of angry Democrats who now are going to choose to again punish the country because they don't think Biden should have been removed. They all believe Trump's terrible, but they don't believe Biden should have been removed. Let's not make this mistake again, okay? Look at the Supreme Court today and remind yourself why we don't want to make the 2016 mistake again. Nick wrote me a beautiful message, and he says, "Hey there, ass packer, you scumbag demon rats are so pathetic and predictable about things you do, putting signs in your yard, then trying to take out the absolute best president in history. Stay stupid, dumbass." Excuse me, sir? I don't know what this dude's talking about, but he sends a lot of emails to us. They are quarantined in a very specific place on our server. I don't really know the connection between putting signs in your yard and then trying to take out the absolute best president. But I think what he's referring to is that the Republican shooter of Donald Trump, who used a gun that many Democrats would like to see banned, had Trump signs on his front lawn for a while, and then went and shot Trump. What point Nick is trying to make, I really don't know. I really don't know. Q-Dog commented on YouTube and says Trump needs to win Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. A white man from the Midwest with a blue-collar background who is fresh to politics is the right choice for Trump to win. Trump is going to trounce Biden in November, and it's going to be disastrous for the country. The damage done will take 50 years to undo. I really wish Biden should step aside for the good of the country. I think means would step aside. Well, you know what, Q-Dog? You got it. Biden has stepped aside. And now the question is whether the people who have been calling for Biden to step aside will actually unite behind whoever is the Democratic nominee. I don't know for sure that it will be Kamala Harris, but with Biden's endorsement and growing number of endorsements from other prominent Democrats, it certainly seems that things are going in that direction. Will the replace Biden advocates say, you know what? They replaced him. I'm with whoever it ends up being. Or will they say, well, I didn't mean replace him with Kamala. That's just as bad. We will see. David Saul wrote on YouTube, nothing that any of you say or will do will change the fact that as we speak, every single poll coming out of Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, Nevada, have Trump winning by a substantial margin. Further, there are non-swing states, Virginia, Minnesota, New Hampshire, which are in play this election in the margin of error. In some cases, Trump has a small lead. This election is over. Trump is going to win in a landslide. If you say polls don't matter, well, the same polls had Biden winning in 2020. Donald Trump, at this point in his presidency, even with COVID, had a 45% approval rating. Biden has 36. Keep talking, trying to figure out what you're going to do. The election is over. Trump's going to win in a landslide, and there's nothing any of you can do about it. Clown icon. Well, Biden is out. It is a brand new election, and Biden will not be the nominee. Trump now is going to have to figure out a way to defeat someone who could be half or 2/3 of his age, who is going to be much better at debating, who would likely mop the floor with him if he's not too scared to debate, which it seems he's already laying the groundwork to get out of. So this is a brand new election. Let's actually consider now whatever the options are in the absence of ad hominems about Biden and concerns about age. Trump now becomes the oldest presidential nominee in American history. Are you going with the oldest nominee ever who's a convicted felon and civilly liable rapist? Or are you going to go with a better option from the Democratic Party, likely Kamala Harris, which, by the way, as many of you know, I had the opportunity to sit and chat with the vice president a few months ago. You can argue she's not the beacon of progressivism. Okay, she's not the most progressive person. I agree with you. You can argue that, as Republicans are doing, her laugh annoys you. All right, whatever. What I can tell you firsthand, this is not conjecture. This is not through 7 different sources. I sat in a room with her, and it is hard to think of a more competent person. You know Trump's rants about electrocutions and sharks and batteries and AI? She sat and spoke to me extemporaneously about AI in deeper detail, certainly than the average person, and probably in more detail than most elected officials can do. There is zero competency or intelligence concern with Kamala Harris. Her issue is going to end up being likability and the confidence she will inspire. So if she's the nominee, we will discuss. If it's someone else, we will discuss. And remember that you can get your messages into me, info@davidpakman.com. Also remember, you can get any or all of my 3 children's books, including, importantly, in an election year, Think Like a Voter, at davidpakman.com/book. And if you are interested in being one of the first 1,000 people, that we've got about 600 pre-orders so far. If you want to be one of the first 1,000 people to pre-order my big boy book, my adult book, The Echo Machine, due out early next year, you can find it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Audible, bookshop.org, wherever books and audiobooks are sold. The Echo Machine by me. I did everything wrong, and they're still publishing my book. Check that out. Let me know if you pre-order it. We'll see you on the bonus show.